The wind carried a mournful whistle through the dying plains as the sun bled into the horizon, spilling red and gold over the broken land. The ranch stretched endlessly, dry grass swaying like ghostly whispers beneath the weight of dusk. A horse stood tethered near the corral, nostrils flaring, uneasy, like it could sense what was coming. Everything was still, save for the faint creak of a barn door swaying in the wind and the rattle of a loose shutter. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of dust, sweat, and gun oil. A man sat slumped against a hay bale, blood pooling beneath his coat. His breathing came ragged, shallow, broken. The flickering lantern light caught the edge of his jaw. A young man, maybe 20, maybe less. His hands trembled as he pressed them against his side, trying to hold the life from spilling out. Across from him stood another man, older, broad-shouldered, a shadow carved from the desert itself. His face was cut deep with lines from years of sun and silence. His eyes, gray, like smoke after a fire, never wavered as they met the younger man's. "Please," the younger man rasped, voice dry as gravel. "I beg you. It hurts so bad." The older man didn't speak. He just looked, long and slow, like a man looking back through time, seeing more than what was in front of him. "You shouldn't have come back here." "Eli," he finally said, voice low and steady. Eli coughed, pain flashing across his face. "Didn't mean for it to go this way. I didn't have nowhere else." The rancher took a step closer, boots crunching on the dirt floor. "You stole from me, boy. You rode off with my herd, my horses. You left me with nothing but dust and a grave to dig for the hand you shot. I didn't mean to." Eli's voice cracked. "It was Jeb, I swear. I told him not to, but he pulled first." The rancher stopped, his shadow falling across the bleeding boy. "Jeb's dead. You know that." Eli's eyes flickered, fear mixing with guilt. "I heard. I didn't want it to end like this, sir." His breathing hitched again. "It burns. God, it burns." For a moment, only the soft moan of the wind filled the barn. The older man took off his hat and ran a calloused hand through his silver hair. He crouched down beside the boy, his movements slow, deliberate, like the weight of every step had been measured. "Eli," he said quietly, "you remember what I told you when you first rode up to this place? You were what, 14? Dust on your face, not a thing to your name but that broken rifle." Eli nodded faintly, eyes glistening. "You said this land don't give nothing easy. You said if I wanted to live, I'd have to earn it." The rancher nodded once. "And you did, boy. You worked hard. You had grit. I saw something in you, something I thought could outlast this damn place." Eli let out a shaky laugh that turned to a cough. "Guess I proved you wrong, huh?" The rancher didn't answer. He just watched the boy's chest rise and fall slower each time. His jaw tightened, as if trying to hold back something that had been buried long ago. "You ain't the first to make a bad turn," the rancher said finally. "Out here, men lose their way easy. The land don't forgive. The law don't forget, but..." He looked down at his revolver, the metal catching the faint glow of the lantern. "Some things they're better ended than left to rot." Eli's breath caught. His eyes widened. "No, please don't. I can make it right. I'll do whatever you ask. Just don't let it end like this." His voice broke again, trembling with terror and pain. "I beg you. It hurts so bad." The rancher's hand tightened on the gun. For a long time he said nothing. Then in a voice softer than the wind itself, he whispered, "It'll be quick." Eli froze. The world seemed to stop breathing. Even the wind outside went silent, as if the earth itself held its breath. The boy's eyes glistened with tears that never fell. His lips moved, but no sound came. Just one last breath, shallow and afraid. The rancher raised the revolver. His hand didn't shake. His eyes never left the boy's. A flash, a sound that cracked through the stillness like the end of a storm. Then, silence again. The lantern flickered once and steadied. The horse outside let out a low, uneasy snort. The rancher holstered his gun, took off his hat, and knelt beside the body. For a long time he didn't move. He just stared, his eyes empty, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Finally he spoke, voice rough, breaking. "You were just a boy." The wind returned, soft and cold, carrying the dust of the plains through the open barn door. The sun had set now, and the world outside was painted in blue and shadow. He stood heavy, slow, and reached down to close Eli's eyes. The rancher walked outside, his boots dragging through the dirt, leaving long, uneven prints behind him. He paused at the fence line, looking out over the dark horizon. The moon had begun to rise, pale and distant. Somewhere out there, a coyote cried, a lonely, mournful sound that echoed across the wide emptiness. He whispered to the night, "Forgive me, Lord. I done what mercy allowed." The land said nothing. The stars said nothing. Only the wind replied, brushing past him like a memory. Morning came slow, spilling light across the plains in streaks of gold. The ranch stood quiet, shadows long and thin across the yard. The barn door hung open still, and the world inside was still, too still. The rancher sat on the porch, a cup of cold coffee in his hands, untouched. His hat lay on the step beside him. His face was drawn, pale beneath the dirt and the years. His eyes were fixed on the hills in the distance, though he saw nothing. The deputy rode up around noon, dust trailing behind his horse. He pulled to a stop and dismounted, tying his reins to the post. "Morning, Cal," he said quietly. The rancher didn't look up. "Morning, Sheriff." The lawman glanced toward the barn, then back to him. "Heard you had a visitor last night." Cal nodded slowly. Eli came back. The sheriff let out a low breath. "Didn't think he'd make it this far. Word in town was he got himself shot up near the river crossing." "He did," Cal said, voice flat. "He bled most of the way here. Said he was sorry." The sheriff waited, looking down at the dust beneath his boots. "And then?" Cal's eyes flicked toward the barn for just a moment, then back to the horizon. "Then he asked me to end it." The sheriff's face tightened. "He didn't ask the next question. He didn't have to. I buried him," Cal said after a while. "Behind the north fence, next to the mare he used to ride." The sheriff nodded, jaw set. "I'll put it down in the books." "You did what a man had to." Cal didn't answer. His hands were still wrapped around the coffee cup, though the liquid inside had long gone cold. After a moment, the sheriff said softly, "He wasn't your blood, but you treated him like he was." Cal finally looked up, his eyes hard and tired. "Sometimes blood don't make a man kin. Sometimes it's the dirt you share, the work you do, the quiet you keep together." The sheriff looked away, nodding slowly. "Ain't that the truth?" They stood there in silence for a while, two men weathered by the same land, the same loss. The wind tugged at their coats, carrying the smell of dust and sun-baked earth. Finally, the sheriff tipped his hat. "You take care now, Cal." Cal nodded, eyes still on the hills. "Always do." The sheriff mounted up and rode off, his horse's hooves fading into the distance. Cal stayed where he was, unmoving until the sound disappeared into the wind. When he finally stood, his knees ached, his back stiff. He walked out toward the north fence, each step slow, deliberate. The fresh mound of dirt was there, small and neat, marked with nothing but a simple wooden cross. He stood there a long time, hat in hand, watching the wind stir the grass. The land stretched on forever, endless and quiet. "I told you it'd be quick," he murmured. "But I didn't say it'd be easy." The words hung in the air, swallowed by the wide, empty silence of the plains. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled, low and distant. The sky was changing again, dark clouds gathering over the horizon like memories that wouldn't fade. The rancher turned and walked back toward the house, the dust rising behind his boots, the sound of the wind following close. And for the first time in years, he looked like a man who'd lost more than the land could ever take. The storm rolled in by nightfall. Heavy clouds crawled over the plains, swallowing the horizon in shades of gray and black. Lightning flashed far off in the distance, painting the sky white for a heartbeat, then leaving it darker than before. The wind howled through the valley, bending the grass and rattling every loose board on the old ranch house. Cal sat inside by the fire, staring into the flames like they might hold an answer. The crackle of the wood filled the silence, and the light threw long shadows across the walls, making them move like ghosts. The coffee pot sat cold on the stove, untouched since morning. His revolver lay on the table beside him, the barrel still dark from last night. He'd cleaned the barn that afternoon, washed the blood off the floor, folded the boy's torn coat, set it on the fence post like a marker. But no matter how much water he poured, or how much straw he laid down, The smell of gunpowder and loss still hung in the air. He couldn't shake the sound of Eli's last breath, the way it rattled soft and final. He'd heard dying men before, many of them, but this one cut different. A thunderclap snapped through the silence. The fire jumped in the hearth, and for a moment Cal thought he heard the barn door slam again, just like last night. He stood, heart pounding, and reached for his gun out of habit more than need. The sound came again, this time the creak of hinges. He crossed to the window, looked out through the rain-streaked glass. The yard was dark, save for the flashes of lightning. The barn stood still, its door swinging open, banging against the frame with every gust. Cal sighed, grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The wind hit him like a wall, cold, sharp and full of sand. His hat nearly flew off, and the rain soaked through his clothes in seconds. He trudged through the mud, boots sinking with every step. When he reached the barn, the lantern inside flickered weakly. The air was thick with damp hay and the smell of the storm. He pushed the door closed and latched it, then turned to face the quiet. But something felt wrong. He could feel it, like eyes on his back. Slowly, he reached for the lantern and lifted it high. The light cut through the dark corners, revealing stacks of hay, old tools, and a saddle hanging from a nail. Everything looked the same. Except for one thing, Eli's coat. It wasn't where he'd left it. It was lying on the ground now, soaked and half covered in mud, as if someone had dragged it there. Cal froze. His breath caught in his chest. He knelt, touched the coat. It was wet, cold, but not from the rain outside. The mud was fresh. Someone had been here. Then he heard it, a sound so faint he almost thought it was the wind at first. A low, dragging breath. He turned, lantern trembling slightly in his hand. "Who's there?" No answer, only another breath. Closer this time, behind the stalls. He stepped forward slow, gun drawn now, the rain hammering on the roof above. I said, "Who's there?" Lightning flashed through the cracks in the boards, lighting up the barn for an instant. And in that instant, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A shape slumped in the shadows, barely moving. A man, or what looked like one. Cal's heart kicked hard against his ribs. He moved closer, gun aimed, steady. "Speak." The figure shifted, let out a ragged groan. The sound was wet, broken, familiar. Cal's breath caught in his throat. "Eli." For a long moment the world went still. Then came the faintest whisper, trembling through the dark. It hurt so bad. Cal stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern. His hand shook, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something crawling up from his gut. That voice, he knew it. It wasn't real, couldn't be. He'd buried him. He'd put him in the ground himself. He raised the lantern again, desperate to see. The figure was gone. Only the empty stall remained, the wind moaning through the cracks like a dying man's breath. Cal's jaw tightened. "Ain't real," he muttered to himself. "Ain't real, Cal." But the moment he said it, something behind him whispered again, closer this time, almost in his ear. "It'll be quick." He spun around, gun drawn, eyes wide. The lantern's flame sputtered, nearly dying. Nothing there, just hay and shadows. But the whisper lingered, soft and cruel, curling through the air like smoke. Cal backed toward the door, every muscle tight. His heart hammered. The sound of rain and thunder filled his ears, drowning out reason. Then, faintly beneath it all, came the sound of hooves. He turned toward the open crack in the barn wall. Outside, through the curtain of rain, a horse stood near the grave. Eli's mare, the one he'd buried days ago. Her mane was slick, her eyes reflecting the lightning. And behind her, Cal's breath stopped, stood a figure, still, watching, the boy, Eli. He looked whole again. No blood, no wound. Just standing there in the rain, head bowed, hands at his sides. Cal's chest tightened like a vice. "You ain't real," he whispered. But Eli lifted his head. His eyes, those same pale eyes that once carried hope, met Cal's. Only now they were empty. "Why'd you do it?" The words cut through the storm, low and steady. Cal took a step back. "You begged me, boy. You said it yourself. You was dying." Eli's voice was calm, but it carried something deeper. Sorrow, betrayal, maybe both. "I didn't beg for death. I begged for mercy. Cal's hand trembled around the revolver. It was mercy. That's what it was. Eli took a step forward. The rain passed right through him, dripping like smoke. Then why does it still hurt? Lightning split the sky again, blinding. When Cal blinked the light away, the figure was gone. Only the grave remained. Fresh earth, washed clean by the rain. Cal dropped to his knees, mud soaking through his jeans. His revolver fell from his hand. He pressed both palms to the wet ground, shaking. The thunder rolled overhead, deep and endless. He whispered to the dark, "I did what I had to." But even he didn't believe it anymore. The storm raged on. Wind screamed across the ranch, tearing through the fences, bending the grass flat. Cal stayed there until the rain stopped, until the cold sank so deep he couldn't feel his hands. When morning came, the plains were quiet again. The storm had passed, but the land felt different, emptier, heavier. Cal sat by the grave once more, hat in his lap. His eyes were red, his face pale beneath the dawn light. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "You said it hurt. I reckon it still does, for both of us." He reached down and placed something on the grave. A silver bullet, polished clean, gleaming in the first light of morning. Then he stood, turned toward the horizon and walked away. The wind picked up again, gentle this time, whispering across the grass. It carried one last voice, soft, distant, fading with the dawn. "It's over now, Cal." And for the first time in years, the rancher smiled, tired, broken, but free. The plains stretched out before him, endless and quiet once more. Only the sound of his boots, steady and sure, echoed across the land as the sun rose over the wild west.